Welcome to Afterlives with Kara Cooney, in which we discuss ancient Egyptian history and relevant current events that we think will be of interest to our audience. I am Kara Cooney, and I'm a professor of Egyptology at UCLA. This podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at UCLA. In recent years, I've become active in communicating with the general public about the history of ancient Egypt through lectures, interviews, social media, books, and guest appearances. This podcast is my opportunity to take the kinds of deep dives into history that are not always possible in academic formats.
Welcome back. I'm Jordan.
I'm Kara.
And this is
Afterlives with Kara Cooney.
So this is our part 2 of Demystifying
Academia.
And let me tell you, me typing demystifying, I typed it wrong every single time.
Of course you did. I wouldn't be able to type demystifying.
Thank God for autocorrect.
Yeah, but sometimes autocorrect. Like every time we try to put in recarving, because all we do is talk about recarving.
It says recurving.
It always autocorrects it to recurving, and that really upsets me. But
all the Egypt terms don't come out well.
No, there's some other more egregious ones, but we'll leave that for another time.
Yes.
But yeah, what do we get to do today? We get to talk more about the academic game and how to break it down. But once you're in the PhD program, or what do you have
so last episode we ended on right when you get in and are starting. So we'll kind of finish through the process with what the PhD entails.
Yeah.
Coursework, exams, proposing, dissertating, all that stuff. And then we'll get into some post-graduation type things, the job market.
It's brutal out there.
Postdocs.
Yeah.
And then even being a professor, ideally, and you can enlighten us all even about being chair.
Oh dear.
I could. So let's begin with the PhD coursework. What's the process?
Yeah.
And we're speaking about the humanities, right?
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't about math or physics or engineering or any of these other PhDs.
And in the States.
And in the United States.
As we talked about last time, Europe is way different.
And we're going to focus mostly on antiquity. I don't know what a PhD in literature might be like, but history, history and antiquity studies, you're going to have 2 to 3 years of coursework. For our fields where you have to learn ancient Egyptian, Old, Middle, and Late, you have to do Coptic and Demotic, you have to do your research languages of German, French, and or Arabic. It takes a lot of time. So 3 to 4 years of coursework is generally de rigueur. And then what I always say to my students is, and UCLA students are in a union, they live here, they're paid, their payment comes from being in Los Angeles. So you don't do your 3 to 4 years of coursework and then cut out, go someplace else, and then come back to finish up. You stay here and you're a professional in this space. And in that way, I encourage students to come back and do courses with me and seminars with me, pass, fail.
Yeah.
Which so you've advanced to candidacy, right? And you're still in courses.
It's nice to kind of keep up on stuff, especially for language, just to keep things fresh.
Yeah.
In your head, keep translating.
Do you do everything pass fail?
Yeah.
See, I don't even notice.
Yeah.
I'm not even.
I just do pass fail. You don't have to even sign up technically. You can just, come and sit in, but just nice to stay relevant, keep up on things. There's new readings. Well,
we're doing a late period seminar.
Yeah.
Starting tomorrow. Oh my God.
One.
And so late period, if you haven't worked on 25th, 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th dynasty, this is perfect. Yeah. And you can come in and get a lot of this reading under your belt. And if you take it pass fail and you don't have time to read, everyone else is reading and discussing it. So you're learning by osmosis kind of what's going on here. And then you can decide, I'll read that one, or I'll read this article here or there. So
that's what I'll usually pick and choose a couple of things to read. And,
there's just so much information within Egyptology in particular, because you're dealing with 3,000 years of culture, religion, language, history. It's overwhelming. And that's not even including materiality and art history. So it's just a lot. And I think when you're doing a history PhD, for example, and say you're focusing on American slavery history in the 18th century, then things can get more magnified into one period. But I think if you're doing that kind of a degree in American studies, you're still going to need the 400 years of the beginnings of settlement and colonization in the Americas, maybe even before. One would ideally hope before there was colonization in the Americas by the white people, and then thereafter. So your training in the courses is much broader than what your dissertation actually is.
Well, and for us to even, I think in most ancient studies, you kind of have to have a outside area focus too. So we take I did a bunch of courses in the Levant.
Me too. That was my outside
So
area.
it's like, it's not just Egypt even.
Because when you go out into the market, and we will get to this, but you're ending up in a job where you might teach Gilgamesh to the fall of Rome. And if you're teaching that kind of ancient history sort of job, you need to know a lot more than just your own area
versus American history, which is 400 years.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think American history is broadening in its own way. So, you know, it's interesting, but Assyriology, I think, is the same sort of coursework. Levantine studies, same sort of 3 to 4 years of coursework, 2 to 4 years of coursework. And then you form a committee at UCLA and you defend your proposal. And
we should talk about exams first.
Oh yeah, let's talk about exams.
So exams come before you propose,
right?
Your dissertation topic.
Your comprehensive exams that are testing you on all that you've done in this coursework, from language to history to art history, archaeology, depending on what you're doing, and out of area. And you choose your exams at UCLA to some extent, but others are imposed upon you and you don't get any choice, right? And how did you set up your exams? Because for me, it was a completely, and we talked about this a little bit last time, where my exams were in 1 week and then they were done. Your exams are over a year-long period.
Yeah, I did them, I think, over 6 months.
That's nice.
To kind of chop them up a bit.
Right.
Which is nice that our NELC department allows for such things. So then you can just study for one at a time and not have to do like all 4 in a week or something.
Yeah. No one ever feels ready for their exams.
No.
Ever.
I keep trying to tell this to current students who are at that phase, and I'm like, just get it, like just go and do it.
And some people aren't ready for certain exams and need a little more time to gain a mastery over the material. And sometimes failing an exam is the only way to know that situation. And then you go back into some of the data and you relearn things, and then you take the exam again. It happens in grad work all the time that people fail exams. What about grades? Grades in grad school, how do you perceive it?
You only have a 4.0. I've never not.
You better have a 4.0. Like an A- is like,
you did something wrong. And I know certain students who got like a B+, and we were like, shock. Ooh, that means that was bad.
B+ is not good. Do they realize that the students who got the B+ that there was a problem there, or are they still using the undergraduate mindset and they're not able to see it? Yeah, generally that's the way. I mean, the other thing about grad school, and Jordan knows this, and I know this, is that not everyone is meant for graduate school, because it is a long, lonely road full of seclusion.
It's just hard mentally
difficult.
It's a very, your ego is very out front. People are going to criticize, and
you're taking your thoughts and your ideas, presenting them to the academy in a graduate environment or beyond. And then those are criticized, and you take those in, and it's very easy to take them personally in every way, shape, or form, and to shape your academic work as yourself. And because of that, and it's one of the only jobs really that I think is like that. What else?
And it's because you don't have like a 9 to 5 where it's like you always could be working, you always could be doing things toward it, so you feel guilty for taking time off or breaks.
I'm always working.
And I think too, it's I see this meme going around on Twitter and other places where it's like, you were the gifted person, maybe in high school or even in undergrad, and then you go into grad school and it's you and all the other gifted kids, and then all of a sudden you don't feel so special or amazing, or you finally meet someone who's way smarter than you.
So in one way, it's wonderful. You come to grad school and you get to be with all the nerds that you are like, and you're like, these are my people, I connect with them. And then you're like, shit, now I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not the most eccentric. Right? They're like, oh, I'm that weird person that likes this.
That was my
stuff.
Niche. Like I was like the Egypt person.
And now your eccentricity has been normalized, and you're like, oh, okay, so I don't have that coolness
like
factor.
Identity crisis almost in a way of like, where do I fit in now?
So they're your people, and yet you have to recalibrate then how you are as an individual in the world, because then you see that there's competition amongst these people who are your friends, and it's but the point I was going to make, if I remember going back, is that grad school isn't for everyone. And you have seen the people that, and I don't want to say flame out, but it's like they just don't get how hard one has to work. They don't get the amount of commitment that it takes.
Yeah.
They don't get the rather perfectionist attitude that you have to apply to your papers and your presentations. They don't get the footnoting. They don't understand the amount of ingenuity and original thought you have to bring to create an argument that is yours to contribute. And so some people who were good at school and good at book reporting then realize, oh my goodness, this is not just descriptive, and I have to bring something more to the party. And some people, they can't either emotionally handle it or academically handle it. And those people usually kind of float away.
Or get a terminal master's. Go on and do something, tangentially related to something. But
because teaching, if you
there's nothing wrong with not finishing.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Finding it's not right for you.
Because teaching and not producing research is rewarding in a way that academia is not. Because when you're teaching, you're trying to meet the younger mind and connect with the younger mind, and you're not putting yourself up there for consumption, for critical consumption of an audience. That is why higher level academia is so destructive of hearts, souls, minds, and bodies, and why so many academics get a reputation for being kind of Mr. Magoo, cut off, spacey. They're just in their own world, so they don't even notice it all. Maybe they do that purposefully in a way. Jaded, sometimes mean. There's like a hazing culture in academia that is rarely discussed. Certainly Egyptologists know all about it. They know which universities are famous for their hazing and cruelty to graduate students, and which
professors are mean.
Which professors are straight up mean, and where bullying is an essential part of your upbringing, academically and professionally. All of those things go along with this field. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say too. One of the topics we can talk about maybe now is just, the community. And, your colleagues, and between other grad students, between people maybe in your department, but, maybe not Egyptologists, or with your professors and the
how
dynamics.
have you formed your community at UCLA?
Well, I think UCLA has we have a good positive group. No one's like trying to cut each other down.
Yeah, it's true.
Now,
of course, we would have to say this because we're on a podcast. And this is
there's still like gossip and drama stuff will happen, but just compared to other things I've heard from other similar departments, it's sometimes can be very cutthroat. And I don't think any of us, we might not all be like BFFs or something, but I don't think anyone's trying to like maliciously sabotage.
You hear stories of
other people
ripping articles out of a book so that they are the only ones that have it. These are old stories from my generation when it actually mattered that it was an article in a book. Now everything's on JSTOR, so that's not possible to do anymore. But that's kind of the old stories that I grew up.
Just like, hearing. Or like, like middle school cattiness and things. And
my first year of grad school, another grad student told all the other grad students that I had tried to steal some guy's boyfriend. And I was like, wow, that's like some malicious slander. And no one talked to me my whole first year of grad school. No one spoke to me. I had no friends, and it took me forever to figure out. Well, I'm like, why will no one hang out with me? What's going on? And it took me a full year and a half to figure out that it was just open slander. So that was interesting. That's the kind of thing though that makes you leave a program.
That's what I'm saying. That could have turned you off, and you could have been like, well, no one's nice to me. Like there's 5 people in this whole program, and if no one's talking to be like, I don't want to be here. It
was a lonely year. And our program, and again, when we say that UCLA is awesome, we're not saying inherently that everywhere else sucks, because there are really good programs out there that have good communities and good professors, and these things exist. And the same goes for classics, history, other fields, right? But Egyptology is weird because of how many we train. And it's incredibly popular at UCLA right now. So I think we have 12 students at some stage in their career in PhD studies, which is kind of extraordinary. And not everyone is like, there's different groups now. It's so big. You're not all BFFs together. So
and it goes off by kind of like where you are.
Your
like
cohort.
People who are farther along tend to group together because you're in the same process zone. So if like I'm stressed out about dissertating, like I'm not going to go talk to a first year because they don't
help you
understand. If anything, I'm just going to terrify them, and they're going to be like, oh, holy shit, like I don't want to, like what is going on? So you go talk to other people who are either have already dissertated and can mentor you through the process, or people who are at the same level.
So it's the same as with like any other job, I suppose. If you start a job at a big company and you want to create your community, but unlike some of these other jobs, you know, you're going to be at this place for 6 to 8 years. That if you transfer in this world, and it's not like getting another job and moving to another company and finding your upward mobility. You got to stay at this place, and you've got to find a way to make it work. And sometimes with professors, your mentors, you know, they might be more absent than you would like, or maybe too present, or and micromanaging, or not even reading stuff, or never returning emails. There's all kinds of ways of working with mentors and having mentor relationships. But
to me, that's because of those things that maybe are out of your control, and you just have to learn to work within these boundaries. Having colleagues that you can bond with over these things. How do you deal with this one professor? Oh, they're notorious for sending bad emails, but in person they're really nice. And then you know, oh, okay, that email wasn't meant to be read that way, or something like this. And having good open communication between other colleagues in our department. And the one thing I noticed particularly was that we had like a mentor system kind of in play between the older grad students and the younger ones, where like Danny kind of took me under her wing to be like, okay, this is the process, and if you have questions, like the older grad students were really good about, you know, helping us come in and like not like hazing, like, oh, you figured out, like throw into the fire, but like, oh, this is the process, you have questions. Or
I feel like the parent of a large evangelical family. What's the name of the woman that has like 20 kids?
Oh, the Duggars.
The Duggars.
You remember the Duggars?
Yes, because she assigns an older kid to a younger kid, or two, depending on, because she's got 20 kids, right? So, and there's this, and we don't do it formally, but I see it happening where the older grad students then gravitate towards a younger set of grad students and then help to mentor them on their way.
But Danny was like the first person to like, you should publish that. Like, oh, that would be a great.
Danny Candelora, who's now assistant professor at a SUNY, SUNY Cortland.
So it's like, she was like, oh, that you should present on that. It'd be a great talk. And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, do it. Like force me to like
be brave.
You know, sign up for my first ASOR and like push me to do that.
You need support to be brave. But all of this brings up to me how much is dependent on personalities and how much is dependent in your graduate career on that professor with whom you're working. And this is why I think UCLA is a happier, kinder, gentler place to be. Not because we as people are necessarily kinder and happier and gentler, but because the system does not allow, usually, though there are exceptions that we have both seen, one professor to make a decision that's going to destroy a grad student's life. For the most part, when the system is working as it should, there's another professor or two who are on your committee who are like, wait. Oh, you don't want to work with her? I'll work with her. Or that was an issue. Okay, come over here. Or there's some sort of a balancing situation. It's a hard place for one professor's decisions to destroy a career.
But I felt, you know, less pressure to do, you know, you're not trying to make like cookie cutters of yourself.
No, you don't have to like please me in every way.
More, I think more freedom to find what they want to focus in on, and
it
how
puts
they want
less
to
pressure
go.
on me too, because then I don't have to be like, oh, that student is mine, and that student is a mirror of my work,
like
and
we're working
me.
together.
You're my colleague.
Mine.
Yeah. So you're working with a committee, and it's a very different way of building a student. So I would advise you, as you're looking at graduate programs, whatever they may be, to look for those places that are more driven by committee and less driven by one person. Now, you may end up in a place where, and my situation was like this. Actually, I had two people that I was working with at Johns Hopkins, Betsy Bryan and Richard Jasnow, who were both very dedicated and really into my work, and it was great, and I was able to get what I needed. There are situations in which you're dependent on one person who's not willing to give the time or the work, the reading that you need.
The attention. In a way.
And many places play favorites. So they'll decide out of their 5 students, that's the one I want to work with. And all of the other 4 are rather discarded, neglected, ignored, orphaned, if you like. And so that's one of the reasons that graduate work is so harmful on mental health, because then you're like, my work doesn't appeal to this person. It could be that you're working with an advisor who is insecure themselves and then can't handle that your work is potentially challenging their work, or they don't want to hang out with somebody who's smarter than them. I'm using scare quotes for those of you who are listening. And it's a lot of power in one person's hands.
And it can be abused
at some universities
very easily.
It can be abused.
Yeah. As I mean, there's so many instances of of various forms of abuse within academia.
And I think this goes for any field. I think like if you're working in a STEM field and you're in a lab and that lab is run by one person, you have the same situation at hand. And there's going to be one star that rises up and that gets the best assets and the best resources and the grant money and all of this stuff. And then other people are looking in from the outside. But there's more group work in STEM, and articles are written by as many as 20 people. Whereas in our field, and this is the other thing about the humanities, our field is built upon monographs with the work of one and single author articles. And when you do work in collaboration with others, which we see in archaeology all the time in our field, everyone's like, well, who wrote it? How did it work?
I just co-authored a paper
with
Robin.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But it was, we, split it up. So it's like, you write this part and then I'll edit what you wrote and then I'll add what I wrote and then you edit it. So it's like this very much this back and forth process. But we had to do it because it was sensory and textiles. And it was like, I'm textiles, you're sensory.
That's going to be a great article.
Oh,
this is the article that I call the wet t-shirt contest articles, because it's a sensory textile thing. So it's what happens to a textile
and dance
and movement when you make it wet, when you add oils to it, when you add movement to it,
sound.
So it's the wet t-shirt contest of ancient Egypt. I think it's going to be. Where is it published?
It's going to be one of the Oxbow.
That's awesome.
In one of the chapters in the Oxbow.
That's awesome.
Okay, so we talked about exams. Well, you mentioned committees. Maybe we can explain how you choose a committee.
So your committee choice at UCLA happens when you come up with what you're going to contribute, your basic topic. And you're like, this is my topic. These are my research questions. This is my data. And then once you have that, like you're doing textiles, right? And you're working on fashion, then you're like, I want this person to be on my committee. And that person, usually within UCLA, who your people are, and you'll have two people generally who are in your field already. And so those are just natural fits, but then you're looking on the outside, like who's going to help me with the textile part? Who's going to help me with the fashion part? Who's going to help me with the economics part? If you're working on an economics crossover, that kind of thing. And then the only defense that you do at UCLA is of your proposal, which is less of a defense is a scary word and it's a problematic word. It's more of a workshop, right? Where so how did it work for you? You presented like 20 minutes?
Yeah, you give like a half-hour presentation of your proposed project, going through your methodology, your theory, what data sets you think you're going to use. And then
how much time you think things will take?
Yeah, like, your timeline.
Do you need to travel? Budget. Real in the weeds kind of stuff?
Like a whole research proposal in a sense. You write it up. So it's 30 to 50 pages. I think people want them shorter now. But
no, it depends.
Just as soon as you start typing, it just keeps going and going and going. But
the mentor.
You do a historiography of this topic.
Historiography is just it's the literature
history
review
of the research of that topic.
History of the research of that topic. Who has talked on this topic before? Why is what you're doing any different? Why are you contributing? And why is it important? Which
to me was the main thing I thought you guys wanted as my committee was like, why is there, a gap? Why is this worthwhile?
Was it what we wanted as a committee?
You guys kept asking that kind of question. Like, what are you going to contribute?
Right.
Like, why is it this research project worthwhile going, through with it?
Right.
Like, what are you going to contribute? What's the gap that you're going to fill?
I mean,
it needs to be like, there needs to be a point to it.
And not just a point for the ancient world, emically, within the ancient world, but also, we're donating tons of resources and time and expertise to a question that needs to not only be relevant to something that happened 3,000 years ago, but should also be relevant to the way that we think today. And it helps you get grant money if your question is more relevant to the modern world. So that's where I tend to look and focus.
But even Professor Bonishow, one of my committee members, she was like, that's the one thing she wanted when we were editing it back and forth. She was like, focus more on this and stuff. But anyway.
Oh, can I jump in and say one thing? So the other thing about Egyptology at UCLA that I really like is that it encourages more work at the beginning with people who are not Egyptologists, which means that you, if you're being trained to be an Egyptologist here, or to be an ancient thinker that works with, a thinker that works with ancient data sets from ancient Egypt, then you have to be able to present that data to somebody who works with Levantine or ancient Roman or ancient Greek data sets or New World. It could, but that kind of crossover within the antiquity and within the historical world is super important. And the less that you stay within your close ivory tower or put your blinders on or are navel gazing, there are many things that one could say, the better your work is going to be, the more applicable. And Egyptologists are always accused of, one, not using enough theory, and when they do, just kind of, you know, glopping it on, cherry picking and glopping it on, or two, not speaking to anyone else outside of their field. And it's one of the reasons that Egyptology is perceived as more colonial, more backwards, and it's something that we're trying to change within the field. So it's something that we need to be thinking about constantly.
But when I was choosing, you know, my committee members, it's like I had you and Vilica as the two, you know, Egyptologists. So then I was
this
like,
is
okay,
Vilica Ventre, the other professor of Egyptology.
you know, I have that covered. So it's like, what else do I need for my dissertation project?
Right.
You know, I need someone who works with fashion and textiles, which got me to Professor Amy Gansel. Who does Assyrian stuff, but it's like I can use her theory, her methodology to help me look at this data. And then Professor Kate Bonishow, who's at UCLA, works a lot with identity. So, and that's, you know,
and display,
identity,
public festivals.
And she had great theory suggestions, and it's like, you know, has been super helpful. So you don't always need to get someone in your field. You can, you know, people who work with similar methodologies or theory from other fields can be, I think, almost more helpful in a sense.
Yes.
Because they have a totally different perspective. They don't know the Egyptian data. So they're kind of coming from a different.
I mean, when I was coming up in the 90s, there were not a ton of jobs in Egyptology, but there were more than there are now. And people were creating the dissertation for those jobs within the Egyptian field. Where can I make a contribution? Now that the Egyptology jobs there are jobs, and there are two this year, one in Brown and one at Johns Hopkins, which is amazing. And arguably some others too, but there are jobs coming up, but 2 jobs for all the people that are being trained is not enough. It's not enough. So you know that you need to be able to apply for all those ancient history and ancient art history positions. And that's exactly what we are geared towards here. And that's what I'm looking for. It's like, okay, when you apply to those jobs where they want an ancient historian or an ancient art historian who can work with Gilgamesh to the fall of Rome, how is your work going to be applicable?
And it's like, oh, I was trained by people who work on other things and not just Egypt.
So we like comparative work, I think, a little bit more than at some other places. And because of the committee system, we're more capable of it. I'm not going to be able to advise on comparative work because I don't know about all of these other places. But if there's a committee member who's able to advise on the comparative work with a particular student, then that dissertation work is going to be that much more broad, relevant, and it's going to be reaching out to other parts of the academy beyond our own little world.
And one suggestion I got from other grad students, my good friend who's now finished and has a assistant professorship, she suggested going, you know, you have 2, when I was forming my committee, she's like, you have 2 established, you know, full professors on your committee. She suggested going for people who are, you know, earlier career scholars, because she had that on her committee, and she was like,
and tell me why, and just be real, because I'm the non-early career scholar who doesn't have the time.
That was it.
To put in.
She was like, you'll get more attention from them. It means more to them because they have to serve on committees. It goes on their CVs that they served on X person's committee. So they're getting something out of it too. So they'll put more work.
Whereas the older jaded people who are doing like me, they're chairing the department and they're dealing with all kinds of personnel issues or whatever, or hiring somebody. I don't have the time. Sometimes dissertations come up when I don't have the time to read it as much as to get into the weeds of it as much as I would like. That you want that early career scholar who's going to be able to give you more. It's true.
More line by line feedback perhaps or something. And so that was, you know, have a mix of both to help.
That's really good advice.
So we got committee, and some of the committee requirements are often, you know, made by humanities division of the university, right? You can have X have to be so many at UCLA, and then one can be outside.
Yeah, the grad division at UCLA is always trying to create PhDs that are not insular, that are relevant. And in so doing, they demand that you have at least one member of the committee from outside of the department. And it depends on, so they're trying to make you broader. They're trying to make you more interesting than people in an academic world. I mean, what's the old saying? You go to grad school because you're super excited about a topic. And then what do? They beat out that passion and they destroy it and they make you footnote every last little crazy thing. And all of that passion gets turned into fear and anxiety, and it just goes in a different direction. And that's what normal human reactions are. If those are normal human reactions, then you're going to be more insular and in the weeds and detail oriented and thick description in a dissertation. And so there need to be systems in place that are like, no, come back out and look at the whole world. Come back out and connect with somebody who's not doing your own little thing. And that's where those grad division requirements are so incredibly important.
And it's useful. You say something and then the person's like, what? And then you're like, oh,
I'm speaking
Egyptology right now. And this doesn't make any sense to anyone else, even though they're, a scholar in the ancient world. They have no idea what I'm talking about. And I need to.
The other thing that does,
come back.
that requirement from grad division, it means, and the other thing that grad division systematizes is that you're applying for money internally at UCLA.
It's our next topic.
It is our next topic. Funding. Okay, so
good segue.
Thank you. So to get like money for travel, money, so you want to go abroad for a year, or you want to go to a museum in New York or Boston or whatever, in Paris. You want to work with somebody and learn a language in Leiden, which we've had students do. To get that money, the best way to do it at UCLA is to apply internally, right?
Easier.
And so you're going to be applying against other graduate students. If you write a proposal that's totally in the weeds that only another Egyptologist would fund, then you're not going to get the money. People are going to be like, I have no idea what the utility of this is, why it even matters. This is so, strangely specific and not useful to me at all. Then you're not going to get that money. And so it makes you have to say something broader.
Make things relatable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of funding,
yes.
So in PhD programs, we have grants and we have fellowships. Are there any technical differences between these?
I mean, a fellowship,
besides just like phrasing?
Yeah, I think so. A fellowship is your bread to eat. It's your funding for getting through the day. And a grant, I suppose they could cross over, but for our world, not so much.
Yeah,
for the STEM world,
usually, right?
For the STEM world, big grants can create fellowships that then are your payment throughout the
like
year.
An NEH or something.
Yeah. Exactly. But in our world where we don't do as many of those big NEH, NSF grants, though some of our colleagues do, it's the university fellowships that you get sometimes through, do they call the TA-ship a fellowship? No,
because it's all tax purposes is how it ends up playing out.
So that's your TA-ship, which is work.
TAing is W-2 form, so it's work.
Okay. And then if you get the fellowship, so you don't have to teach.
And then that's just a tax nightmare.
Is it really?
It's awful.
But you don't have to pay taxes on it, do you? You do.
No, but the way UCLA fills out the 1099 form, they claim like tuition and everything as part of the fellowship. And then it looks like you're making like $60K and you're like, I did not see that money. And then the government wants to tax you on $60K.
So how do you do it?
I changed the number. Don't tell anyone.
No, everyone does this. Everyone does this.
Don't come audit me.
It's
honestly so much easier when it's just your TAing, because it's just a W-2 and you're like, they already took out the taxes. It's like such a pain in the ass when you get a fellowship.
So the fellowships are this mixed blessing in terms of tax purposes.
And then even if you go to the UCLA tax place they set up for us, they don't even know how it's done. It's like this or you're only supposed to tax.
And that changed just recently too, didn't it? It was a congressional shift of the last Congress that decided that people should pay. So here's what's at work here. They decided that people should pay on the tuition that's being paid. So you come in and you're coming in tuition free.
Yep.
Your tuition as a resident should be $16,000 a year.
Yeah.
In addition to your fellowship for living, you never see any of that money.
It's just all internal. They pay themselves.
Yeah.
But
they're still taxing you on
someone's like the department is paying the grad division the money or something, but then they want to tax me.
And when that law was passed, and I don't know the name of the law, maybe we can look this up and research when this happened. I feel like it was about 5-6 years ago. Yeah, sorry, Amber, that's something to look up. But I think it was part of the anti-intellectual movement, particularly anti-humanities PhDs, like what is this even good for? Be useful kind of thing, and a little slap on the wrist. And I think it happened at the same time that they decided to make the interest for student loans, which didn't accrue immediately as the grad student loan is started. Yeah. When I was in grad school and I took out a student loan, which I only did like twice, but I did, interest didn't accrue until I was done with the PhD. It just sat there, the money. And then when I got the PhD, then the interest accrued. And I was able to put that into a low interest loan immediately right away and put it all together, consolidate it, and keep it pretty cheap. For you guys, the interest accrues as soon as you take out the loan, which means that a $20,000 loan by the time you're done is going to easily be $40K. Easy, like no problem with the interest that's accruing while you're in school.
I saw mine the other day because like, I got one of those like credit score went up and I was like, ooh, and I like clicked on it and then it had like, you know, it has like all your breakdown and everything. And it was like debt. I was like, ugh.
When I was in even your undergraduate loans also did not accrue interest until you finished school. So if you were in grad school, your undergraduate loans did not accrue interest. Yeah. So what they're doing to you is so unfair and so horrible and needs to be changed. And it's
President Biden. You should cancel all student debt.
Please. I mean, the way that student debt is accruing and the way that people who come to graduate school with their undergraduate loans in play and those accruing interest, it's awful. It's just awful. So yeah, we can look up some of that, but it's made graduate school in the humanities very much a game of the rich again. Yeah. The rich and unloaned. And
which I came in with no loans from undergrad because I was fortunate enough that my parents could afford to.
But then you paid for that master's.
But then I paid for the master's.
That's where you have It's awful. It's awful.
But so in most PhDs, so I think within the States there's kind of two different type of fundings for PhD programs, at least in the humanities. Yeah. You have ones that are like fully funded for say like 5 years, like say at U Chicago. If you get into the NELC PhD there, you get 5-6. They extended it to 6, I think,
because it's hard to finish a PhD in 5 years, even when you have a master's. But
that's why a lot of people at the 5-year mark at Chicago would then move away and finish from afar and go get a normal job or something.
Most of the private schools and Ivy Leagues are like this, where you are funded a pretty good salary for 5 or 6 years, and then when that funding's done, if you don't get any outside funding, you generally move away from the university, finish your PhD. In whatever manner that you can.
My friend, her last year while she was finishing, moved back to her parents. Yeah. And she was still getting fellowship, but she just banked it.
That's awesome.
Because she's like, I don't have to be on campus. I'm not teaching. I'm going to move back to my parents, finish writing from there.
It was during
COVID too. So
I won't ask you what university, but it was U
Chicago.
That was Chicago. Completely different way of doing it than we do.
But I know all the Chicago, I know a lot of, older students, older in their program students who have moved away and are, have a side job or writing on the side. I mean, have like a full-time job and are finishing their last year of dissertating just kind of on the side and moved or, having kids, and it's a totally different setup. But then you're kind of, you're separate from what's maybe going on.
You're not a part of the cohort. You're not in daily contact with your advisors and other students.
Which happened to my friend she wasn't there. So then it was hard to get a hold of her. She doesn't do Egyptology. It's a totally different field. Good. But she had a hard time, getting in touch with her advisor.
And then the years can pass and all of a sudden you're 10 years into the degree and 11 years. And are you going to finish? Yeah.
But so for UCLA, our funding, your first year, you guaranteed a fellowship. Fully funded. So you can focus in on.
Oh, so you have to deal with that tax problem your first year.
Well, you don't
first year.
You don't do the taxes until the year after.
But still, I didn't think of these things.
But that's why it was helpful for the older students to be like, this is how it's done.
Yeah.
And it's done correctly because apparently one of the students got audited. And
shut up.
Because they were like, you're not paying your taxes. And then he showed them all the paperwork. And they were like, oh, why does...
I remember when they changed this law and they're like, how are we supposed to do our taxes? Because we don't see this money. And now this is why the United States, it drives me crazy, right? So we passed this law politically because it looks good. And then you create a loophole so that if you work with an accountant who tells you how to do it correctly, so that you don't have to pay taxes on money that you never saw, and that's legal. Why did you even pass the law in the first place? Yep. And what is it all about? Except for obviously the interest accruing to banks and all of these. Yeah. It's just a way of making the 1% richer.
Yeah. Well, it's like, why is someone like making money off my like scholarship?
It's
like, it shouldn't be. And it's not like it's a lot of money.
No, it's not.
Know? And they're like, oh, we only tax what you use for room and board. And you're like, well, that's all of it because I need to live. And the scholarship's not.
And we live in LA.
And we live in LA. So yeah, that 20 grand went towards my rent. So, but that it's just easier to TA actually.
Oh my goodness.
And then you get money back.
So the way at UCLA, and this is unusual amongst all of the Egyptology programs that I know of, and indeed many humanities PhDs as a whole, is that at the state schools like Berkeley and UCLA, when you come in as a graduate student, your funding is, we're allowed to take so many grad students because your funding comes in mainly through teaching. So if I teach a big class, like Women in Power in the Ancient World, 200 students, then we have many TAs. We'll have 6 to 8 TAs.
We have 12.
We have
for the next quarter.
Up. Oh my God.
We could even have another one if someone wanted it because we have so many waitlisted students right now.
Oh, Amber, will you make a note of that and I'll look into it? I should check.
Because we have almost, we could actually have 2.
Really?
Yeah, we have almost 40 students.
Okay, let me see with our staff
and with
if I can find it.
Women in Power, it's 20 students each, so we could have 2 more sections.
Okay. There's a TA, but there's a TA shortage right now, so I probably won't be able to do it. But there's that many students on the wait list, and we're getting the emails right and left. Please let us into this class.
Can I get in?
I know.
I need it.
I know, it's insane.
And I'm like,
ugh. And at least we offer it in the summer so that students can get it before they graduate. But oh, that's interesting. Okay. See how we're doing work while we're podcasting. That's really funny. What was the question?
But so UCLA is mainly, we make our money off TA.
Yes. So it means we can accept more than 1 student a year per department. It means that you are professionalizing throughout your time here working on your PhD so that you're teaching 50% or 75% if you decide to go over and you need more money. And you're working on your dissertation research and your classes and other things the other half of the time. And it means that you have to learn to organize your time. You can't be single-minded in your focus. Even during a fellowship year, I found there's so much going on that it's hard to be single-minded in your attention to your coursework and your work.
I think too, at least for me, I get more done when I'm really busy.
Yeah.
It's when I have more time.
It's exactly
like a fellowship. If I just have I just have to take classes, then I get nothing done. Where if I know this is your only day to work on your dissertation, then it's like, okay, I need to sit down and work on my dissertation today. Versus when every day could be a dissertation day, then it was never a dissertation day. You know,
this is the old joke about sabbaticals for faculty. When you do enough teaching and you earn time off for a sabbatical, and then you start your sabbatical, you're like, I'm going to get so much stuff done. It's going to be amazing. No one's going to take any of my time. I'm going to write my book. And then all of a sudden it's August and you're like, where is my sabbatical gone? Because really with time organization, you kind of need to be around all of the noise and all the crazy to be able to keep adding to it.
I'm sure some people are good at it. It's just not the way I work. I need to be like busy.
I was just telling Remy that this is my husband, when he went out of town to Hawaii for it was a while, like 6-7 days. And I'm like, oh, don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm going to get so much done. It's going to be great. And then he came back. I was like, I didn't get anything done. And I realized I need to be annoyed at the beautiful family around me, taking me away from work to want to work. And when the beautiful family is not around me, taking me away from work, then I just don't know what to do with myself. And I fall into a Netflix ball of pain and suffering, and there's no point. So, we all have our system. Some people need the space and the quiet and the clear thinking. I need the noise. I need the noise in the community and the life around me. That's what spurs me on to get things done. And I need the teaching, and I think you guys need the coursework, because the way we have it set up is I'll have the students bring in their research all the time so that you're able to create a seminar based on your teaching, based on your research.
Yep.
And so teaching and research go very much hand in hand, and it feeds off each other and creates an awesome feedback loop of creation.
And I think a lot of the TAs, I very much enjoy teaching the undergrads. It's a nice, you feel like it's very rewarding. Like I'm physically, you know, doing something. Students often have like, you know, there's always like the mean students who have mean things to say, but for the most part, you know, they're usually very, you know, appreciative and interested. And
because she gets student evaluations just like I do. And student evaluations are kind of, the academic world is weird. The way we judge each other. Yeah. We judge with grades. We judge with student evaluations for those who are giving grades. So there's a give and take here. We give them grades, they give us grades in a sense. And when we go up for promotion, or when you go up for a job, showing your student evaluations with all of the little detailed comments is an important part of that process. And people want to see, are you a professor who can reach out to young minds? Are you well liked? Yeah. Are you considered a taskmaster? And they have proven that student evaluations are crueler on the female who is considered shrill, abrasive, difficult. And the male professor acting in the exact same way with the exact same demands is considered authoritative, strong, smart, you know, all of these things. So the gender biases, even amongst females making these student evaluations, is so obvious and provable, discernible amongst people who work with data, that they're thinking of throwing out student evaluations entirely.
Or we need to change how they're done. I've very much appreciate them. In most cases, my students have always taken them very seriously and given like very good, constructive feedback, and nothing, you know, where you're like, oh, I wish I could throw this out type of thing. But I've heard horror stories from other people, and of where you're like, I don't really want this in here. And it's not, you know, constructive in any way. It's like about your appearance or something like that. And
I've had some bad student evaluations. They can't be avoided. And it's just part of the...
Sometimes it's like, they're just, oh, I didn't get the grade I wanted, so I want to write you a nasty eval. And it's because they didn't do the work. It's like, well,
normal human reaction.
You know, blame the other person. Sure. Okay.
But anyway, but you enjoy your teaching for the most part.
Yes.
And at most of the Ivy Leagues and most places, you don't get to teach. So this is something that you're looking for TAships. TAships are hardly fought over at many of these places because there are so few of them.
And it's like such a, you only get to do it like your last year, and you teach one class, which is just funny because we come out with so many.
No, you come out with a teaching dossier of profound professionalization and knowledge that you can then put out there in the job market.
And teaching classes that are outside of Egypt. You know, I've taught Jerusalem, and it's like I have to do all the reading because I don't know anything about Jerusalem, and
which makes you that much better candidate for the jobs market when the time comes.
But so that's one way of earning.
Oh, but there are other ways. So you know, what do others like Amy Carroll? What does she do?
So she
did, because she's finished now. She's now Dr. Amy Carroll.
Humtech stuff. Yeah. So you can work. So in most cases, you know, TAships are considered 50% employment, because there's only we're only allowed to be percentage 50% employed based off our union.
You can get an exception to be 75.
But you have to fill out a paperwork, and the union is very, you know, good about making sure we're not being overworked or whatever. Certain other students have worked at Humtech, which is like the humanities technical department, like IT. And I know a couple students who work there, and they can get paid. You can work for the library.
And then you have a training in digital humanities and digital pedagogy that you wouldn't get in any other way.
So anytime there was an issue with like
and
our
even
website,
coding, they know how to do these things. It's great.
You can get other good stuff. I think we could talk about unions since we've been bringing them up a bunch.
Let's do it.
That's a controversial, I think, thing at some certain universities.
So we have unionization all the way through. So the grad students have a union, the lecturers have a union. We don't have many adjunct professors, so most of those teachers are unionized in a lecturers union, and they get good benefits for teaching, I think, 3 classes or more. And then the latter faculty are part of the academic senate. So we're the governance of the university, and in a sense that is our union. One could argue that we're the most overworked out of the whole group. One could, but yeah, it's because no one's looking at my hours to make sure I'm not working too much. I can tell you that.
So the only group that isn't unionized, who are currently trying to right now, are GSRs.
Oh, okay. So this is interesting. When you're a grad student, you float in between being a teaching assistant or associate, depending on your rank, and being a graduate student researcher, where you're paid your 50% or 75%, which is unusual, but could be, to be a researcher for a professor. So they're working on a book or something, or they've got an excavation, and you're there doing work for them. Oh, and they don't have, so you could be abused and
they make much less than TAs do.
Interesting.
Like a couple thousand less.
Okay. And so now there's a push to unionize.
So they've unionized. UC has not recognized them yet.
It'll happen.
So they're pushing for it. And
I know it could fold into the grad student.
I mean, ideally it should just be with us.
Yeah.
And I know we're going up for renegotiations soon. So they're very much like, make sure you've paid your dues, you're a member, because we need the numbers to say but they're going to, renegotiate our salaries and this good stuff. And
that's good.
But hopefully they just absorb the GSRs. But I think it's more of an issue in the sciences,
right?
Where that's mainly their funding is through GSRs,
right?
And the different level, they have, I don't know, different levels of GSRing.
But if your whole career is working in a lab, not teaching, but working in a lab, and you're always a GSR and you aren't unionized, you could totally be abused by a lab manager in terms of time and hours.
Well, and so much of our union isn't even just hours, it's childcare and other benefits. The reason we have health insurance through the university, which a lot of grad students don't get health insurance through their universities.
Shocking.
I can think of many private schools who do not provide health. Are you serious? You have to pay for it. Yeah.
Really?
I think it's subsidized. And
so when you get
it's not good insurance. Our insurance is actually very good.
Wait, so Jordan, if you get into an Ivy League, are these Ivy League schools included?
Yes.
If you get into an Ivy League and you get one of those packages that pay you $50K per year.
It doesn't include.
So you have to then take out money to put in for health insurance.
Does not include health insurance. You have to pay for it through the university still. So it's cheaper than just buying it off the open market or whatever. But and it's not good. It doesn't have dental, doesn't have eye. It's just so you don't die. Yeah. I think the mental health coverage is pretty poor.
Our mental health coverage could be way better.
Yes.
It could be way better.
It's just how the system is just awful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you can't change the entire mental health system in the United States.
And just how the UCLA gives you, you can visit 6 times. And you're like, oh, wow. Thanks. 6 whole times. And they're and then you have to go somewhere else. And they don't pay for any, but that's a whole other thing. But the union, we get insurance, we get childcare. If you have a child, you can apply and they'll help cover, daycare costs and all this other good stuff. So they help a lot. And as you were saying with TA-ships, there's different levels. So the longer you've TA'd and if you've proposed and become ABD.
All but dissertation.
You go up to an even further rank. So, and it's a pretty, I think, maybe not for LA, a good salary, but for other places, it's
not bad. It's not bad.
You make more TAing than you make on fellowship.
Yeah.
By a lot.
And your numbers go up because of the union. So what you make starting out as a TA in your 2nd or 3rd year versus what you make in your 6th or 7th year is very different.
Thousands of dollars a quarter different. Yeah. So it's you work up. So then what other kind of grants or fellowships?
Yeah.
So we have internal ones you can apply to.
And there's so many. There's so many at your university. You should look for all the different centers. There may be a center for gender or women's studies. There may be a center for queer studies. There may be a center for economic studies. And you want to look at all of these different places and see if they have travel grants, see if they have grants for conferences. There's all kinds of things that you can apply for.
It's sometimes overwhelming because they're maybe not centralized with sorting through them. And so sometimes it's a lot, word of mouth or doing a little hunting on the side. It's, older colleagues what did you get? Then I can apply for it. Yeah. In years in the future. But
so the department at UCLA and probably at Berkeley provides a basement funding. And then you go out and probably starting in the fall, you put together your application package. Like, this is my statement of purpose. This is the research I'm going to do this year. This is why it's relevant and why it matters. And then you apply for 6 or 7 different things. And then you see what you get back. See, throw your spaghetti at the wall and then see which strands stick to the wall. And then you add to your salary from there. I didn't have to do this at Hopkins. Hopkins, they give you had a package. You get a package, and there weren't, because of the package, I had to look to employment within the university. So I worked at the library.
That's what I did for my master's. I worked at the museum. Yeah.
So you find a job inside, and then that job helps to supplement your stipend and keep you going in the world. Yeah.
But at like UCLA, we have pretty good, GSRMs, which are graduate summer research mentorships, which I think are, a lot of people get.
Now being called Smurfs, summer mentorship, summer mentor research fellowships.
I kind of like
Smurf.
That's nice.
Is the way it's going. And the department has to put in money for Smurfs.
Oh, okay.
We don't have to put in money for the GSRMs, the graduate summer research mentorship. But the department has more control over who gets the summer money, rather than, one of the things that's annoying is you put all of our names to grad division. They make the choice through their vetting process, rather than we making the choice when we know in our minds who the better students are. But I get why they're doing it. It's what I said before, that grad division is like, no, we don't want you to be in the weeds and speaking only to yourselves. We want you to be global and speaking to everyone. We're going to make the choice who we think is making that communication best.
If there is some favoritism or something going on in the department,
cuts it off at the knees.
Maybe less biased, hopefully.
Yeah. So our stuff is read by, the sociology division somewhere, and they don't have anything to do with us. And they're like, oh, does this seem to have data? Does it seem to have what it needs? And then they'll judge our students, and we don't get to judge our students, which in many ways is a beautiful way of dealing with conflicts of interest, favoritism, all kinds of issues. So the Smurf thing it's interesting. It's interesting. So we'll see how that goes.
Another big fellowship that I think is at a lot of universities are the dissertation year fellowship.
Right. What's the reputation of the dissertation year fellowship at UCLA?
Well, I know that if you get it and you don't finish, you're screwing the rest of us over.
Yeah, it's true.
So if you get it, you need to finish, because then we lose it.
Because the way it works is grad division looks at who gets dissertation year fellowships to not have to teach, to only focus on your dissertation. That's it. And if you don't finish the dissertation in that department, then that department is not mentoring you properly to finish on time. And then that department will not necessarily get a dissertation year fellowship the year after. It might not always work that way, but that seems to be under consideration. And it gives you a hard out. It means your funding is done after that time. And that it's just,
those you guys do rank, right?
We do rank them, but those rankings are not always followed. Yeah. It's always a check and a balance in this.
But those are nice to have. If you have one, you're done. I think the best advice was from Marissa, who was like already almost done.
Yeah.
And she applied and got it. And then she like gave herself a year to like just do edits and then apply for jobs
and work on the book. What's the book going to look like? Write some letters for publication.
She set herself up for like, I'm almost already done and I'm applying.
She also applied for so many jobs too. She was able to apply for all the jobs.
Very, always is very organized.
Yeah, she
on
is.
point.
She is.
So those are.
Oh, this is Marissa Stevens, who's now assistant director of the Port-Aviv Center for the Study of Ancient Iran. Yes.
I think we covered funding, did TAs, all that good stuff.
Oh, but there's outside funding too, right? So you could apply for, like, I got a CASVA grant, Center for Advanced Studies in the Visual Arts, or you could apply for an AAUW, American Association of University Women. That's a good final year dissertation fellowship.
NEH people do even.
Yeah, there's a dissertation year fellowship. That's NSF for archaeology. Does NEH have one too?
I don't know. I just know a couple people have done NEH for like bigger, like to fund their whole PhD even.
Wow.
You can get like a funding from the whole thing.
Wow.
But you have to apply from that like as you're applying for PhD programs like up front. So.
Right. And we don't have those kinds of requirements. A lot of European universities do, where you have to apply for these things for statewide funding, countrywide funding while you're trying to get into a PhD program.
Yeah. But I think that there's always like little things, travel grants here and there.
Some of you guys are so creative. Like I've seen a lot of people find Rotary Club grants, or like weird little, like their hometown has a grant for some sort of education and they pull in $500 for something. And, you pull in $500 from little grants and those add up, and you're able to make your life more comfortable with those kinds of grants, or travel when you have the time in December and the summer to get data that you need, or to just learn more about your topic. And
well, and like little grants here or there for excavation. There's certain things for like more archaeology related stuff. But yeah, there's always something you can pick up. Steinmetz, they have both. We have an internal Steinmetz, but there's also external.
This Steinmetz travel grant is a lifesaver. Yes. It is the game changer. And we are so thankful to Charlie Steinmetz for setting up that grant, because every grad student can apply for it once to go somewhere. And that grant's generally about $1,000, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less.
Yeah, they take into account where you're going, and usually their goal is to just cover your airfare.
And it's wonderful.
So it's, depending on where you're going in the world, the airfare can be, but yeah, around, $1,000-$1,200.
Right. It's
but it's great. Yeah. That's helped all of us. But
and how do you find out about all these grants, Jordan? Like, because I don't have to do it anymore. I look at different grants, right? I might look at some of the bigger grants, though I like to avoid doing those, because then you end up administering your grants your whole life, and I don't like it. But how do you know which ones?
Word of mouth, I would say.
There's no like database that you use.
So UCLA has one.
Yeah.
But they tend not to be humanities focused, or at least ancient studies focused.
Yeah. And your university will obviously have
has some type of grants database. I think our SAO is pretty good about sending out stuff that comes through.
Student affairs officer.
She'll send it to the grad student listserv. Oh, there's this grant or fellowship available to apply to. I think it's just something you slowly get a handle on.
Yeah.
There's not like, the AIA, American Institute of Archaeology, has some online.
Archaeological Institute of America.
Yeah, that. But that tends to be more classic, Greek and Roman classics focused. Yeah,
but some of the chapters have been very useful.
Yes.
So maybe some of the bigger grants through AIA don't pay, but then the chapters, we have 2 chapters here. We have an LA chapter for AIA and we have an Orange County chapter. And they fund students $2,000 to $3,000 for travel and research.
Yeah, I guess just other archaeology or ancient history related institutes.
Yeah.
Like these things that have, presentations and conferences are always good to check. You can just hunt around, you just do a little hunting and
then some of the local things when one person applies for that, you're like, wait, where did you get that money from? What's that? And
or certain things you think you can apply for, then you talk to someone who's gotten it and they're like, oh no, like you should apply. They, and it's like Egypt, especially, it's like, does Egypt fall within, the
parameters of,
because some scholarships for like art history would be like outside of Europe.
Right.
You're like, well, that's Egypt.
Right.
But then other times, Egypt gets lumped into the, Greek
because of white colonial studies
canon of art and so how you work things, how you,
and you have to apply for some of these things twice. You have to know that you will not get some of these things. That is the way. And I think that the other thing that state schools do well is, because we can't fund to the level that an Ivy League can fund, is we're always sending you out there to apply for things, and we're sending you out there to get rejected a lot and early. And so you realize that you won't be surprised by this when you get on the job market and you're like, oh my God, I'm getting rejected a lot and early. It's the norm. It's just the way that it works. So you're trained and ready for it. You're kind of battle hardened and battle scarred and ready to,
fully funded. You're not, maybe
you don't have to do that at all. More complacent and
relaxed.
Also more protected. And then when you're thrown out there into the arena and you start to get hit, you don't quite know exactly how to deal with it. Whereas you guys are like, this is the game, this is how I got to play it. And you find a different way through that beast.
But I think it's, asking around, and this is where the networking comes in, having good mentors around you who know what things to apply for, friends that know what things at conferences, and always keeping appraised of
But professors, we don't know what the hell you're supposed to apply for. We kind of do. Sometimes we're like, why didn't you apply for this?
You have a good handle on it.
Maybe because I'm chair.
Maybe. Yeah.
And so,
but whenever stuff comes up, you always forward it like, oh,
that's true.
These are good fellowships. These are good grants for you guys. I don't think you're out there like,
looking for
like hunting for things,
yeah.
But when they, things come your way and you direct it towards us or little things like that.
Do you have in there when you're supposed to give papers and things like that?
No, that's a good one. Let's talk about that.
Because the funding is making me think of applying to give a paper. And so much of the time, publishing too, but so much of the time when you get money to go to a conference, it's got a stipulation, which is what, Jordan?
You have to be presenting.
You have to be presenting. So if you want to go to a conference in your field, say you want to go to RC, the American Research Center in Egypt conference, say you want to go to ASOR, which is now what? Ancient Studies of Overseas Research. Used to be Oriental Research, but now that word's no good. So now it's Overseas Research. Thank you. ASOR is like the ancient Near East, Middle Eastern, ancient Middle Eastern studies. But say you want to go give a paper at one of these conferences, then you need the money to do it because you don't have an extra $1,000 burning a hole in your pocket. To get $200 from that person and $300 from that person, you have to say, I am giving a paper.
Yep. You don't get like for last ASOR or 2 ASORs ago, I guess at this point, I got one of the student scholarships only because it was my first time presenting. Yeah. And I was presenting. Yeah. So you had to be like, it was the first time attending the conference and you were presenting at the conference.
And they gave you shit money too. How much did they give you?
Not a lot.
Like $400, $300?
Yeah, like if that. It didn't even cover the hotel room per night was more.
Yeah. And when you go to a hotel for a conference, you really want to have 4 people in that room. Wow. Do the 2 beds. Did you do that?
I just stayed with Jeff.
So it's just 2 people in the room.
People. But I think I ended up using, my dad has a bunch of
hotel points.
So he paid for it.
And Airbnbs have really saved graduate students because if you get an Airbnb.
Yes. That's what we did for RC in Arizona. We all just lived in one Airbnb.
There's that weird house that that was New Mexico.
We had 2 houses.
That was New Mexico. Yeah. That was at some weird house Airbnb.
But it's sometimes nice to be in the conference hotel because you can just run up to your room real quick. And there's parties in certain people's rooms.
There are and
you want to be exclusive parties.
Yeah. I try to get a suite so that I can have parties when I'm doing the hotel thing. This is true.
And everyone hangs at the hotel bar and then they run out of alcohol because it's a bunch of Egyptologists.
It's awful. When do you think you should give your first paper?
I think you should wait until like maybe close to proposing. Yeah. Or onwards.
You gave a paper in your second year?
I did it in my 3rd year.
So that's fine. That's good. I did my first paper in my 3rd year too.
I think everyone feels a push to really present at all these things and just like always be presenting or even publishing really early. But some universities don't. Some universities and mentors are like, I don't want you out there until you're a complete package and you look better. But I think you've always cautioned us to like wait a little bit.
You don't
you don't want to do it and then
you don't want a train wreck. I've seen some train wrecks. I have seen
especially say like at RC. Yeah. You want to be really packaged and put together, and you also want to be known enough so that people know to come to your paper, because if no one knows who you are, these things are popularity contests. And yes, you might have a topic that's going to draw people in, but you also want to be a person that's been networking and at the parties and connecting with people. So they're like, oh, I want to go see Bill's paper or whatever. And they know who that person is. And or not even that they have an interest in your paper, but it's like, again, like you said, a popularity contest where people show up to show support for you as a person and as a scholar. You don't want to give a paper to 10 people in a room. So which happens all the time. You have to, with COVID, it's been interesting because it's all online. And like ASOR this year, I'm doing the online component. I'm doing the online. So you're pre-recording and sending them in, and then we're all watching them and then meeting. Or are we? Well, we're supposed to all watch them. And then in December, we're going to have like a workshop and chat. Right. Which I think panel, since it's very focused on like dress and the body, I think it will be we'll have a good discussion workshop between everyone. But I think for larger panels that are like archaeology of anywhere, it's going to be harder to, I'm in a panel for ASOR that's about power
And so it's perfect. And I think it's going to be fun. I was going to go in person and now I'm online.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were like hesitant and.
Well, because there are parts of the country, LA is doing great, but there are parts of the country that are not doing great. Not at all. But anyway, so just know that there is disagreement amongst mentors and professors about when you should give your first paper, about how dissertational that first paper should be. There is also disagreement about publication. So some places are very much of the opinion that you don't publish until it's perfect and you really have something to contribute. So you probably won't be publishing until your last year of the program, or maybe even after. Other places are like, you publish now, you publish early, you got to get your name out there and be a part of this game.
All these things under your belt.
There's a lot of disagreements about how this should work. At UCLA, I think we're probably a little in between. You don't want to be publishing early and fast just to do it. It needs to be something of, this is obvious for anybody, but there's such a pressure to publish that you often see people publishing just to have something rather than it being of true substance.
Well, and I think it depends on what your dissertation topic is and if other people are also writing on it, if you kind of want to get your stuff out there to put your, stamp.
What do I call it?
Piss on your territory.
Yes, you got to pee on your
so if you want to be like, this is my argument, this is my stuff, you might want to publish more early to kind of lay a claim to things.
Right.
But it's just, I think it's
why do a dissertation in some cases for some hotter topics? Why go through the whole process of doing a dissertation and hold on to that work for 6 to 8 years and then hold on to it for another 3 years or so until the book comes out and nobody knows about it, whereas you could be publishing parts of it in advance in article form, which I always encourage students to do, so that people know what you're working on and they know that the book is gearing towards something that's adding to that. And you get feedback as you're going, your book will be richer for it. And it makes so much more sense.
I think, So I think it depends on a lot of factors, but I was going to say something else about publishing. I'll come back to
articles, books, edited volumes, peer reviewed.
Well, we can talk maybe about peer reviews and how we have this stereotype within, I think, all of academia of reviewer number 2.
Please explain.
So it's always, you send in your article, it gets peer reviewed, and you get back the comments of the article, and they're all anonymous, right? They're just numbered.
And there's usually 3 options.
There's usually 3.
It's either publish as it is, publish with significant revisions, or rejection.
And there's this joke amongst academics of reviewer number 2, who's the person who completely destroys you, and it's like, reject, this is garbage, like just mean. And then reviewer 1 and 3 are like usually like, this is great, or change these minor things, and reviewer number 2 just slashes and burns you.
The review process is one of the most confusing and problematic parts of academia, but it's also there for a reason. Like I just posted this Nature article about the Sodom and Gomorrah, right? The Sodom and Gomorrah, and the comet hit the earth, and I'm posting it because it's in Nature. I'm like, it's in Nature. It's peer reviewed. And of course that, and then you see on Twitter and other places, the explosion of outrage against this work, against the people who did the work, their apologism, their a priori religious belief systems. Peer review can fail, and does. And this is a situation in which peer review
it's like
failed.
Nature published a while ago that awful genetic study of Egypt of the
Abu Sira Melik, and saying
they're Levantine and white, and it was like, Nature, what are you doing?
So problematic.
It's like you study 3 bodies from 3,000 years of history.
You're right, that was Nature too. Who's on their peer-reviewed board? How are these decisions being made? Something's
I've noticed. It's been weird lately.
But just take peer review as a thing. So here's how it works. You're writing an article on coffins, say, because that's what I might write an article on. And your work gets sent out. And let's say you're a junior scholar and you're just making your way in the world and people don't know who you are. Like if I send out an article for peer review about coffin reuse, everyone's going to be like, oh, it's Kara. And they're going to know it's me. And, they're going to see my work in the work. But say you're a junior scholar and you don't have that reputation yet, and it gets sent out to 3 people, 2 or 3 people, it depends, in your field. So it gets sent out to other people who are in the same territory that you are in, who, according to normal human reactions, are geared up to be super defensive, super challenged, super territorial about their own work.
And there might be already established relationships and, oh, I don't like that person, so I'm going to give their article a really terrible review.
They might know who it is. They might see in the footnotes, oh, they're working with this person. They might figure out it's a university that they don't like, they don't want to connect with.
So you don't get the name of the author, but you can usually guess who it is.
Yeah, you can in a small field, right? You can usually suss out who it is. And so peer review in and of itself, like I remember when I was writing on gender for the first time and my work started to go out there and somebody else who was writing on gender said, you can't do this. And I'm like, you can't. And I'm like, really? So part of me was super defensive saying, how can I not write about half of the human species in ancient Egypt? And another part of me was like, oh, okay, I am a junior scholar. I need to carve out a particular niche of the gender world so that I can claim it. And then when I am more seasoned and more reputable, advanced, whatever, then I can grab a little bit more. And this is what we often do to junior scholars. And it's the nature of the beast. And it's something that you have to negotiate to get your stuff into peer reviewed journals, because that's what people are looking for, those peer reviewed journals. If all of your articles are in non-peer reviewed places, or I mean, every edited volume should be peer reviewed, right? But edited volumes have a different kind of agenda. The thing that I like about academia in the United States versus in Europe is that edited volumes have almost as much weight. Those chapters have almost as much weight as a peer-reviewed journal article. Whereas in Europe and Britain in particular, being a part of an edited volume is like, okay, it doesn't have the same weight. Our edited, which one? The challenging assumptions? It's peer-reviewed.
So certain ones are. So, just depends.
And I went through and some of the articles got rejected in said peer review, and it was a tough peer review. I was surprised. So, so it's all right. But just know that the nature of it is people think this is mine, and then they defend it. And what's that defensive posture is something that I think you see throughout academia, even where professors work against their own students, potentially to keep their territory as their own and keep their power as their own, rather than sharing and making the pie larger.
It's very capitalistic.
It's very capitalistic. I like that, Jordan.
Right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
We need to be more,
you
thinking more of like longevity and helping and like more
nailing that
instead of just thinking about myself, I'm thinking about all of us as a whole.
We need some more socialist,
making Egyptology better and not just myself.
Some more community oriented socialist ways of dealing with this.
Community.
So,
but I think it's changing. I think so a lot.
I don't know though, because the more the anti-intellectualism hits and the more brutalized university funding is on the state level or federal level, the less resources there are, the fewer jobs there are that are tenure track, the more competitive people get. And it's tough out there already. As we've talked about before, and we talked about last time, that academia is going through a big, profound change. I think over the next 20 years is going to be a really interesting time to see what comes out the other side of this fire. But right now I see a lot of overwork, overburden, people holding on by a thread, a lot of mental health crises, and a lot of people who don't feel supported as they're moving forward in the field.
But I also see people being more open about it and not hiding it, which I think is part of the start of like coming up with a solution. And being more open to, maybe this is big on Twitter lately, of using non-traditional academic type of writings within syllabi for the students. And you always get shit for your trade books. Right?
I do always get shit for my trade books.
But I think there's a push now to like blog posts are cool. Twitter threads are great. Like trade books are awesome. They're still well researched. Just because like
It's for a popular audience.
Just because it's not in a peer-reviewed, whatever this.
But that's academia in a nutshell. I've written a book that tens of thousands of people are going to read, and it is less valued and more poo-pooed compared to the book that I will write that about 1,000 people read. And that is academia in a nutshell.
But I think it's changing. At least
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think she's right.
And like posting podcasts.
Yeah, it's true.
Is becoming, Twitter threads and books that people actually read.
Yeah.
And more people writing books that people actually read.
Yeah.
And not these super ontological, like big word that no one knows what the hell you're saying.
Or doing both. There is a
both.
place for both kinds of work. And that's
which is like, I think the keynote at ASOR a couple years ago with Eric Klein.
I missed it.
His whole thing was about like writing books that people actually will read.
Mm-hmm.
Eric is really good about writing a bunch of books that people like reading. And
this is Eric Klein, who wrote 1177, the year that civilization died. Is that the title?
Yeah.
Collapsed. Thank you.
Digging Armageddon. He's written so many books.
Yeah.
But his books, your books, they're all super well researched. And just academics sometimes just have a bug in their bonnet about it. Maybe because they can't do it.
Maybe
because it's a skill. You have to be a good writer to write those types of books.
I mean, it makes you, it sets you up for more slings and arrows.
Have an actual good voice.
You're putting yourself outside of the ivory tower. You're making points that are much broader than you would make in your own research. It's a different kind of writing. Obviously, my grad students know that it's something that I think is valuable and should be more valued as time goes on.
Because how did I get into archaeology and ancient history in general? It was reading those books when I was younger.
Which ones?
Your book, watching you on TV.
Oh my God. Reading
Eric Klein's book. I can think of like just all those like more
popular
popular history.
When you read my Hatshepsut book?
When was it released? I'll tell you how old I was. When was it released?
Oh shit, Amber, 2014. That one.
It was 2014. So I was in undergrad.
Okay, that's okay.
That's fine. But I remember watching you on TV when I was like middle school.
Shit.
So
I was a youngin',
but just always.
I look back, I was like 30 pounds lighter. I'm like, oh, look at you, hot young thing before baby. So cute.
But I still read popular history books because I think they're enjoyable and you're learning something. And I know they're well researched, and I know people put a lot of work and effort into them.
Yeah, we need more historical novels written by academics. I think that would be great.
I just read The Last
Circe,
Duel.
That book. Who's Circe by?
Madeline Miller.
Oh, so good.
Such a good book.
So good. I love it. And I have her other one, the first one.
Achilles.
Yes, and I haven't started it yet.
Achilles. Yeah. That one's apparently very sad.
Oh, see, I've heard this and I'm avoiding it. So I see it in my little Kindle thing and I'm like, I can't handle sad.
I have so many. I have a book.
Circe was sad.
Yeah. But great.
It was so good.
But even not like Circe and stuff is nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
But even fiction books.
Circe's fiction.
Fiction, sorry.
Yeah.
Nonfiction. Like I read The Last Duel.
Yeah.
It's
a great book.
That's
Eric Yeager. He's UCLA.
Short little thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many good like little fiction, but more for the, public.
Yeah.
More people can digest. Okay, well, I think we covered coursework. I guess we can talk about the dissertation process and up to finishing.
Okay, so the dissertation is your first book. It is your ability to show that you can work with data and ask a research question that demands that you go through the data in a painstaking way that other people aren't going to have the time to do. If that's what dissertational contributions are about.
Yeah.
And then you analyze that data, package it into a book, and then put that out into the world to be published on UMI. What does UMI stand for? Oh my God, we were just making ourselves look really stupid.
It's out of Michigan, right? Is that what it is?
I think. What does it say? This is where everyone's dissertations in the United States go for, and we just call it UMI. And I don't even know what the hell it stands for.
We'll look it up.
Amber's going to look it up. But
I thought it was a repository out of Michigan.
Maybe.
University of, I don't know. ProQuest, thesis.
Yeah.
Theses and dissertations.
Yeah. So, for my dissertation, I looked at a number all the texts that I could find from a particular time period and place, West Thebes, 19th and 20th dynasty, that talked about funerary arts production, whether they were producing coffins or books of the dead or canopic chests or shopti boxes or whatever. And then I looked at all those prices and I went through that data and I collected that. And then I went to every coffin that I could find of the 19th or 20th dynasty. And I documented that coffin photographically and did wood plank drawings and things like that. And then I analyzed that data. And so it was like 80 coffins, like 200 texts. And then I put it all together and into a book that into a dissertation that was called The Cost of Death, Socioeconomic Value of Ramessid Funerary Arts or something. And that was my contribution to the field. It took me, I would say, a year to collect the data, maybe a year and a half, and then a year and a half to write it up and add in some theoretical elements, though there's not a lot of heavy theory in my dissertation. So the process generally takes 3 to 4 years, probably 4 here. Yeah. Amber, did you find out what UMI stands for? What does it stand for?
University Microforms International.
Microforms. Well, no wonder. Who the hell uses those? It's like microfiche and microfilm. My goodness, University Microforms International.
But basically
ProQuest. Okay.
So how long was it?
700 pages, I think.
It's big.
Lots of appendices, lots of catalogs. I think I had 3 catalogs, one for the text, one for the coffins, one for the prices. And it's your first book and you've never written a book. You don't know how to write a book and you don't know exactly what your voice is and what your arguments are. And the hardest thing about a dissertation is, as you're working with the data, you end up writing it from the perspective of analyzing the data, which can make for a very confusing dissertation without a real thread through it. And I see students doing that. I'm like, no, you're writing this in the order that you're looking at the data. Take your data and start moving it around and say, what's the thing that you need to present first? And then write it in a way so that it presents the answer to your research questions the best. And then you have to turn things around, but it's not easy. And as you're writing, you're generally getting in more data. So you're constantly dealing with the data and the argument simultaneously.
So dissertation takes a long time to write.
3 to 4 years with data collection to writing, which are very different things. Yeah. Data collection is a very different type of work than the writing work. And what I always encourage students to do is to not edit yourself while you're writing, or not try to, you want to do these things separately. You want to have your analytical mind of data work or data collection separate from your writing mind, which is separate from your editing mind. So all of those things are different types of mind that we all have. But if you combine them and try to do them at the same time, that is when writing stops. Because if you're trying to write and you're getting in your own way, saying, no, that's stupid, no, that's dumb, no, that's wrong, then you won't get anything out. And what you have to do is create certain mindsets for yourself so that you can get through all of the data and process it all quickly and do it in a certain mindset where you're not getting in your own way, but you are being critical, because you only get one shot with that data. You have to be hypercritical, second guessing yourself, being mean to yourself in a way, like you didn't do this, do that, and go through checklists and make sure you put yourself into like a straitjacket. You've got to get this stuff done. And then when she
looks at me,
I know,
I'm
right?
in that phase right now.
And you might be like, oh shit, I've just discovered a new parameter that I should have been looking for the whole time.
This new application for annotating images. Yeah. That Deidre from Coatson.
Oh, I might want to.
I was like, I went up to her and I was like, not to talk shop, but can we talk shop real quick? And I was like, I know this software exists because I was editing a grant and they were using a certain type of software. And I was like, I want this software for my dissertation.
So you can annotate all the visuals.
You can dump all your visuals into it and create like a database and then tag things, and it will auto, you can create like polygons and tag. And then so I'll be able to search like X garment.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it will pull all the ones that have them. So I'll just be able to do my numbers like,
oh my God, that's amazing.
And I was like, she told me that and I was like, it's perfect.
Oh my goodness.
And
that's
it's
awesome.
Open access. Like it's a repository online. So I could just link to my database
Yeah.
was like,
And database
magic.
And everyone does these databases like a FileMaker Pro where it's just heavy, thick description when you're doing visual work.
And I was like,
it's not useful. It takes so much time. You're getting in your own way. Whereas if you could just go right to the visual and code things out and mark things out, you're going to be able to work on that data so much more carefully. You will find a parameter that you didn't think to look for. You will have to go back through all of your data again and be like, crap, now I got to add this thing, but you'll be able to do it.
And I think the way the software works, it's kind of AI where it will learn.
Oh, wow.
And it will be able to, so you don't have to manually do it each time.
Oh my goodness.
And like pick out, I don't know, kilt. It will be able to be like, okay, this is what a kilt looks like. I'm going to pick out from all these images.
Yeah.
And she said she dropped like thousands into it to test it, and it like handled it totally fine.
What's it called? We'll put it in the show notes.
We'll put it in the show notes, but it's free.
Oh my goodness.
I'll pull it right now. But so once it's called Tropy, TROPY.org.
It's too late for us, Amber.
But apparently really great. And so if you're working with images.
Okay, so that's your data analysis mind. Super critical, super hard on yourself, try to get everything. Then you go into writing mind. You have to change people. You have to create an alternative personality. You have to be super kind to yourself. You have to be like, I need the writing to flow. I need to get the paragraphs out. And you need to take that data and somehow put it into a long written form and allow yourself to write fast, bad, and wrong, but to get it out there. And then you have your third type of mind, which is your editing, more hypercritical on your writing kind of mind, where you go back over what you've written and you're like, oh, well, that's wrong. And I can't have that. But you're not trying to do those two things at the same time. Because if you try to do those two things at the same time, we should have a whole podcast for writing. Yeah. I think that would be smart.
I think that's why we'll do that. So many people find writing difficult.
Yes.
It's because
they're getting in their own way.
You're getting your own way. It's very, you're putting yourself on the page. It's hard. You think you should be writing a lot more than you are. But if you write one paragraph, and it's a good paragraph, and some days you'll write a lot, some days you won't. And
some days when I'm writing and I'm actually writing like to the empty page or putting stuff down for the first time, I get so upset. I get mad. I have to get up and walk around, and I'm like, I can feel them judging me. I can feel them talking shit. And I'm like, just say it, Kara, be brave. And I have to go out there and be brave. And then I have to walk around again. And I'm just, I talk to myself a lot. It's kind of crazy. And I often write in this garage where my husband Remy is like throwing a pot and I'm sitting at the table and just muttering to myself or to him.
You also write at baseball games,
I do.
Airports, and on vacation somehow.
I do. I write everywhere. I like to do the resort pass where you get a pool that day, and I bring my iPad and I write there.
So I would be too distracted by like people watching and.
Yeah, no, I can get into that. I think because I have kind of an ADD sort of personality,
you like the overstimulation.
I can zone into what I need to do. But yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll finish talking about post graduation and all those good topics.
Okay.
After discussion,
we had a little break and a discussion. Yeah.
Since we're we've been talking a lot and we think we have a lot more to say. We haven't covered even graduation and job market, postdocs.
It's too much.
Getting a job. We have so much more to cover.
We're going to do a part 3.
We're going to do a part 3. Yeah. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this. Like and follow, leave a rating. If you're enjoying the podcast so far, we would really appreciate it. You can email with suggestions.
karacooney@gmail.com.
Sign up for the newsletter as well.
Yes. And follow me on Twitter and Facebook. I suck at Instagram.
We also will be doing a book giveaway.
Oh, that's fun. I forgot that.
Yeah, that dropped last week. So we'll be picking out our favorite top 5 suggestions. So we're going to be doing more of those over the upcoming weeks. Pre-launch of your upcoming book. And
where are they going to do this?
So we're going to post them on the socials. You comment below with your suggestion, and then
for podcast topics,
right? That you want to see us cover, and then our favorite ones we'll choose, and you guys get a signed copy of Good Kings.
And those are courtesy of Nat Geo. So Nat Geo Books was like, oh, we love your podcast, and here's some books, give them to your listeners. So thanks, Nat Geo. That's great. Oh. And those will go out in the next month.
Yeah. So if you have an idea, let us know, and you probably win a signed book then.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So come up with a good topic.
Yeah.
We'd love to do it.
Need some ideas.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you to our listeners for your support and for subscribing wherever you listen. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review and help raise our profile and let others know about it. Send your questions related to the show and topic suggestions for future episodes to karacooney@gmail.com. You can find the video version of the show on my YouTube page, and full show notes will be posted in the podcast section of my website, karacooney.squarespace.com. And for that, thank you, Amber Myers-Wells. There you'll also find info on my books, upcoming lectures, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. You can find me on Facebook at Kara Cooney Egyptologist and on Twitter and Instagram at Kara Cooney. See you next time on Afterlives with Kara Cooney.